Ghostland Observatory for you nerds. We're getting wild tonight because it's Walt Whitman. We set my timer. So, at first, when I was reading this, I had no idea what I was reading. And I hated Walt Whitman. I absolutely hated it. Then, as I got to read it, and now I can't decide if I still hate Whitman or I love Walt Whitman. He's definitely a weird guy, but in a awesome way, like a really cool way. So, before I start going, I wanted to pick out the one thing that I thought was absolutely hilarious. And I don't know if you all will find it hilarious, but I thought it was pretty funny. It's on page 105. So, this is in the Calamus collection. Um, and again, I might be the only one who finds this funny. Are you the new person drawn toward me? To begin with, take warning, I am surely far different from what you suppose. Do you suppose you will find in me your ideal? Do you think it is so easy to have me become your lover? Do you think the friendship of me would be unalloyed satisfaction? Do you think I am trusty and faithful? Do you see no further than this facade, the smooth and tolerant manner of me? Do you suppose yourself advancing on real ground toward a real heroic man? Have you thought, O dreamer, that it may be all Maya illusion? Right here, I don't even think the guy is being relevant to anything I've read in here. Maybe he is with the whole uh, love, the pronunciation of sexuality, sure. But when he writes it, Maya, in that last line, I feel like he's inadvertently telling a joke. And I immediately think to myself, chill, Whitman. You're not a threat. So yeah, I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, might be just me. So, unless I read the readings wrong, I know we had Song of Myself, Cal Masset, if I'm saying that properly, and the story in the end with him as a nurse. I can't remember the name, but we'll get to it. So, with these readings, because I'm more used to doing literary interpretation in like a pedagogical structure or creative writing seminar, and I know we're not supposed to do that fully, but I think we were told to, of course, analyze in our own way because it's a large sum of text, and I think that would be best. So I'm going to pick my personal parts of this and just kind of dive into it and go in order. I think it would be good to address, firstly, I thought that Song of Myself certainly deals with the, I suppose you could say, you got a character, he's the character. It's the exuberant pronunciation of nationalism, but it's in a way that is almost new because he's almost addressing American identity as if it is the birthplace of this poetic world that is just unlike any other. It's like the art they can see, they can understand, is better than everyone's. The teachings they have with religion is better. Their philosophy, better. Their spirituality, better. Their athletes, everything about it, better. He also kind of portrays the culture that he was brought up in a way as if it is the birthplace of these kinds of people who are, of course, democratic, but it's democratic in a way that is perfection. It's absolute moral perfection. So it definitely helps to read the bottom pieces underneath these, or otherwise, I would have taken me a much more longer time to really understand that. So let's just go ahead and start on 27. Let me make sure this thing's recording. Okay. All right. Song of Myself. I celebrate myself and I sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. And while I'm doing this, for the sake of keeping it in 20-25 minutes, I'm going to try and skip through these, I guess you would call it a stanza, or my bad, this collection of separate poems in a bigger whole piece, but I'm going to be skipping through. I'll just let you know when I change. I now, 37 years old, in perfect health, began hoping to seize not till death. Moving to 2. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever, and I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. And it says in the bottom that there's this dissonance between experience and naturalism. Okay? So, moving on from that, you keep going, you'll see the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn. He constantly goes back to this portrayal of kind of a beachy vibrance to it. Unless I had looked up what the meaning of green leaves was, I would not know that it had anything to do with, I suppose, a democratic branch or something dealing directly with governance. But that's what it does mean. Moving on some more. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and the sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the spectres and books. You shall not look through my eyes either, not to take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. Right here, I kind of felt like Whitman's trying to say the American concept is not afraid to take in consideration from what differing viewpoints suggest to us, and that the individual viewpoint of his is a good one. And I think as you go on later in this particular collection, you start to see that it's not necessarily saying that his viewpoint is better. He's saying the viewpoint of an American citizen is better because that viewpoint is, I suppose, philosophically intact. It's going to take a little bit from everything we see and hear and come up with our own understanding, indifferent to some sort of violent cause for some, I guess if someone thinks different. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if you agree with me. So let's do that for question number 1. In the introduction of Song of Myself, do y'all think I'm right about that? And is this a good setup? Kind of felt like I would not understand this the way I do unless I had gotten through the rest of it. And if it's truly separate, because I don't really understand the structure of this, if they are separate or meant to be read together, I mean, surely they are, but I couldn't get that understanding without knowing what I do now of Whitman. Okay, we're going to move ahead between 27 and 28. I'm going to the bottom with number 3. Urge and urge and urge, always the procreant urge of the world. Here I'm thinking to do, to act, to be. Then he says, out of the dimness opposite equals advance, always substance and increase, always sex, always a knit of identity, always distinction, always a breed of life. To elaborate is no avail, learned and unlearned feel that it is so. Sure as the most certain sure, plumb in the uprights, well entreated, braced in the beam, stout as a horse, affectionate, haughty, electrical, I in this mystery. Here we stand. Clear and sweet is my soul, and clear and sweet is all that is not my soul. There again, this depiction that even if I don't necessarily agree or think the same as these other people, that's okay. We can kind of work it out. As if he's portraying the American populace as if everyone is like this, just so pure. Showing the best and dividing it from worst age vexes age, knowing the perfect fitness and equanimity of things while they discuss, I am silent and go bathe and admire myself. Welcome is every organ and attribute of me, and of any man, hearty and clean. Not an inch nor an particle of an inch is vile, and none shall be less familiar than the rest. I am satisfied, I see, dance, laugh, sing. You start to question yourself, like in the time Walt Whitman was growing, especially if he's a nurse during wartime and a whole different kind of war, and how is he making such a bold claim to make? I suppose that would be a strong criticism to make, is that his exuberance of poetry and of national identity is in a way, is it truthful? Or does he really just love his nation that much? I really wonder that. Okay, I am moving on to 30. It's number 6. A child said, "What is the grass?" Fetching it to me with full hands, how could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. That's a big question. I think that's something very worthwhile to talk about. And I know I kind of gave my own version of what are the leaves, but to be honest, I don't know. I mean, I think it's far more complex than I'm touching with just something to do with governance and just America, because that's not what it is. I have a feeling what I could lean into, but I think it would be better if we discussed that. So, question 2, what is the grass? What is the leaves? How do they tie into American or national identity from the perspective of the author? So he goes on and he says, I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrance designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners, that we may see and remark and say, whose? Capital, whose? Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Here, I think he's kind of toying with the ideas of our historical identity. Is it tied into something millennialist, godly? And I think he's saying yes, partly, but he's also saying, or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Right there, it's kind of like he's touching a whole new concept entirely, is he not? Or maybe touching a cusp of that. So I didn't notice I was already at 15 minutes. I'm going to try and speed this up just a little bit. All right. Moving a little bit ahead. Okay. Moving on to 40:17. These are really the thoughts of all men in all ages and lands. They are not original with me. If they are not yours as much as mine, they are nothing or next to nothing. If they are not the riddle and the untying of the riddle, they are nothing. If they are not just as close as they are distant, they are nothing. This is the grass that grows wherever the land is and the water is. This the common air that bathes the globe. Right here, this is one of those moments where I'm kind of like, okay, maybe Whitman caught a touch of badassery, right? In the bottom line, I think it's perfectly fine to suggest that he's making a reference to the common man, okay? And perhaps that's what most of these works are addressing in the first place, that the national identity of the world is the common man. And the story of the common man is poetic ability, okay? And by the end, I'm gonna circle back to this. Okay. Um, so let's keep going. He mentions in the middle of 42, I exist as I am. That is enough. If no other in the world be aware, I sit content. And if each, all be aware, I sit content. Another mentioning of this perfect world, all is right. He's going to be accepted. 43. 21. I am the poet of the body, I am the poet of the soul. The pleasures of heaven are with me, and the pains of hell are with me. The first I graft and increase upon myself, the latter I translate into a new tongue. Here, I think he's kind of mentioning American progression, that this cultivation of, in a way, mannerism, this cultivation of the mannerism in the society that he's kind of referencing here leads to one thing and only one thing, and that is progression. Ever consistency in being able to perform better and better at things we do. Okay? All right. So in 45, this was one thing that really kind of put me on the fence, I guess. He mentions time an awful lot. And I know there is some very abstract meaning behind his usage of the word time, but I have no idea what it is. So, second go on 23, a word of the fate that never balks, hence or henceforward. It is all the same to me. I accept time absolutely. It alone is without flaw. It alone rounds and completes all. That mystic, baffling wonder alone completes all. Here, it's almost it's almost like a Shakespearean soliloquy, but it's the author addressing a thought to the reader himself, because I guess you could say he's the main character. He certainly is the main character, and he's kind of making this notion that his work kind of circles around. It's like an orderly chaos. That's what I think. I don't know if I'm right about that. So let's get a bit deeper into this. So 65, from page 65 and on, he gets into some really powerful stuff. Okay? So let's start with. Okay. So I'm going from 65 and on. And again, I'm kind of moving across these a little quickly. In 41, just reading from 41, magnifying and applying come I. Lithographing Kronos, Zeus, his son, and Hercules, his grandson, buying drafts of Osiris, Isis, Belus, Brahma, Buddha in my portfolio, placing Manito Lus Ava on a leaf, the crucifix engraved, with Odin and the hideous faced Mexitali in every idol and image, taking them all for what they are worth and not a cent more. Admitting they were alive and did the work of their days, they bore mites as for unfledged birds who have now to rise and fly and sing for themselves, accepting the rough deific sketches to fill out better in myself, bestowing them freely on each man and woman I see. Discovering as much or more in a framer framing a house, putting higher claims for him there with his rolled up sleeves, driving the mallet and chisel, not objecting to special revelations, considering a curl of smoke or a hair on the back of my hand just as curious as any revelation. Lads a hold of fire engines and hook and ladder rope no less to me than the gods of the antique wars, minding their voices peal to crash of destruction, moving forward, selling all the processes, traveling on foot to fee lawyers for his brother and sit by him while he is tired, tried for forgery. The bull and the bug never worshipped half enough. And here in the last four, the supernatural of no account. Myself waiting my time to be one of the supremes, the day getting ready for me, when I shall do as much good as the best and be as prodigious. Be my life lumps, becoming already a creator, putting myself here and now to the ambushed womb of the shadows. Here, I almost felt like he's diving into some sort of historio-philosophical context. Um, I know he's diving into something so super important right there, though. So that starts on page 65. That's 41. What is the point of applying this historio-philosophical context right here? Is he mentioning these gods to showcase American, or to showcase, I don't know, societal understanding of religion? Is that the purpose of doing this? Because that is wild if that's true. I don't know if that's true, but for a common man to know of this God, that God, and blah, 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 that would be very wild. And that's, I think, is a core discussion to make as well. Is Walt Whitman just telling a big old fib because he likes this world so much? Or is he using accurate ideas when he writes? That's something I really wonder. Okay, I'm already at 20 minutes, so I've got to get off Song of Myself. So, for me, Song of Myself, ultimately, sure, it's an expression of confidence, power. Yeah, absolutely. But more than anything, it's this expression that he believes in the connectedness, can't say that word, the connectedness of other human beings. But he's saying that in a way that suggests that everyone kind of feels the same. To be American is to be caring, hardworking, ambitious, authentic. And we supply this, but he's supplying it through the poetic lens. And his poetry is a project of him being American. So if we got America here and poetry, America creates the poet. The poetry are only poets because they're in America. It's almost, or it is certainly, I'm not trying to be definitive because we shouldn't be definitive in poetry. But in a way, it's saying this cannot be written unless he was American. And he is this way because he's American, and everyone else is going to kind of feel the same. That's what I think, at least. So that's another question. Do y'all agree with me on that, on what I'm saying right there? All right. So 100, for you, O democracy, come, I will make the continent indissoluble. I will make the most splendid race the sun ever shone upon. I will make divine magnetic lens with the love of comrades, with the lifelong love of comrades. I will plant companionship thick as trees along all the rivers of America, and along the shores of the Great Lakes, and all over the prairies. I will make inseparable cities with their arms about each other's neck by the love of comrades, by the manly love of comrades. For you, these from me, O democracy, to serve you, Mafimi. For you, I am trilling these songs. That's beautiful right there. That's really good. I like that a lot. And I think it just kind of is it's a I suppose, regurgitation of this democratic values. That America is this pure democracy, and that pure state of democracy that America has achieved is unlike any other. And not only is our art good and are we poetically inclined people, but we're also able to socialize with our neighbors in a way that no other time or place in the world has seen anyone really achieve. That's what I think the Calamus set is mostly about. It's also most certainly mostly about some sexual aspirations. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty dang sure I'm right. Um, but yeah, the Calamus sets gives this heightened view of the connectedness of man in a poetic democratization kind of way. The base of all metaphysics, 103. And now, gentlemen, a word I give to remain in your memories and minds as base and finale, 2, for all metaphysics. So to the students and old professor, at the close of his crowded course, having studied the new and antique, the Greek and Germanic systems, Kant, having studied and stated Fichte and Schelling and Hegel, stated the lore of Plato and Socrates greater than Plato, and greater than Socrates sought and stated Christ divine, having studied long, I see reminiscent today those Greek and Germanic systems. See the philosophies all Christian churches intended see, yet underneath Socrates clearly see, and underneath Christ the divine I see. The dear love of man for his comrade, the attraction of friend to friend, of the well-married husband and wife, of children and parents, of city for city and land for land. This right here, I think, is super important because I think it kind of adds some more accuracy to what I'm saying. It's this suggestion that the American people, the American ideology comes from this concept that was driven by this intellectual recognition of history of antiquity, if that's the right way to say that. So he says Greek and Germanic systems, Hegel, Plato, Socrates. There's also, I don't think I have came across my own writings that pitted out something with Rome, but I want to say it's for certain in here. Anyway, he's looking at these histories of the world and what they were able to achieve, and he's saying the Americans took bit by bit things from those worlds, and we know what they saw. What they saw was right. And now America, his nation, Walt Whitman's world, was able to encompass that and keep it. And one of the main things he says, the dear love of man for his comrade, the attraction of friend to friend, of the well-married husband and wife, of children and parents, of city for city and land for land. That right there, I think, kind of really ties into what is liberal art, okay, or liberal studies. What is art? What are all these weird things we do, like studying history, writing poetry, looking at philosophy? They're all, in a way, inherently connected to value. What is value? Personally, I get lost between conscious act and the physical world or abstract individuality. That might be something I bring up in another discussion. So I should probably stop right there because this video's gotten way longer than I thought. But I have one more that I want to bring up that I thought was really cool. So in specimen days, I want to say I was completely lost with not reading the text, but I didn't really understand if he was saying anything different. And that could be just terribly poor reading for me. And that's something I really want to bring up. I feel like there is so much here that I'm missing. It's not just value, mannerism, history, philosophy, chaotic expression, poetic form. It's not just national identity. There is so much in here that I'm missing. And that's something that I hope we could form a question between each other and kind of talk about. What is something new that's coming out of this? Okay? So in the very last paragraph on page 280, the real war will never get in the books, okay? On the very last bit, he says, the attractions, fascinations there are in sea and shore. How one dwells on their simplicity, even vacuity. What is it in us, aroused by those indirections and directions, that spread of waves and gray-white beach salt? Monotonous sits with such an entire absence of art. Books talk elegance, so indescribably comforting, even this winter day, grim, yet so delicate looking, so spiritual, striking, emotional, impalpable depths, subtler than all the poems, painting, music I have ever read, seen, heard, yet let me be fair. Perhaps it is because I have read those poems and heard the music. Right there, amazing. And that whole piece in Specimen Days is really good, but at the same time, I call bullshit. Yet let me be fair. Perhaps it is because I have read those poems and heard the music. I don't think he's saying this, and it could just be him as an author adding some flair. But I would think that everyone in the class would agree that Walt Whitman most certainly believes the common man is more poetically inclined than probably most poets are at actual creation of poetry, if that's a good way to phrase that. You know, like farm family and his son and their wife, they look at a sunset on a cotton field and seeing the beauty of it, happy to be in America. That's kind of what I'm diving into. Um, but it's great. It's absolutely great. Again, there is so much I think I'm missing here. And I think this is a really difficult text. Dr. Wegman told me there's actual scholarship on Walt Whitman. I guess you can just go become a doctor of Whitman. Um, that's crazy. So I took up a lot more time than I had anticipated. I will talk with y'all on the discussion boards. Thank you.